Gail, what do you want me to ask ChatGPT here?
Ask it to tell you a joke.
Okay. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Fantastic. Not bad.
Now ask it if it thinks Chinese President Xi Jinping is a good leader.
ChatGPT lays out the fact that Xi Jinping has received criticism as well as being praised by people around the world. But it says ultimately it's up to individuals to decide whether Xi Jinping is a good leader or not.
I spent just over 3 years in China covering the country's tech space. China heavily censors controversial content on the internet and several foreign internet services are blocked.
So when I found out that Chinese firms were looking to create their own ChatGPT rivals, I was thinking, how will that look exactly?
Mainland China has a unique internet landscape, one that is heavily censored and regulated. Users in mainland China require a virtual private network or VPN to access some of the world's most popular websites in order to evade the country's internet control system known as the Great Firewall. While ChatGPT isn't officially banned in China, when Chinese tech giants launch their rival products, they will no doubt be under the watchful gaze of Beijing.
From the perspective of the Beijing government, it essentially faces a dilemma.
Xin Sun is a senior lecturer on Chinese and East Asian business at King's College London.
So on the one hand, it needs to make sure that Chinese firms are catching up with tech development, with Western counterparts. But also, on the other hand, the full implication of this new technology has not been fully understood.
I'm here chatting away with ChatGPT, a viral chatbot which has sparked massive interest across the world in 2023.
It's called ChatGPT.
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 ChatGPT. ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Developed by American company OpenAI, ChatGPT is an example of generative artificial intelligence, effectively AI that's able to generate content. You can ask it questions and it will give you responses based on the massive amount of data the AI is trained on.
I'm particularly interested in its responses to my questions about China. My first question is ChatGPT worrying to the Chinese government? ChatGPT says it may be of concern to the Chinese government if it and other AI language models are being used to spread false information or to engage in activities that are deemed to be against Chinese law or interests. ChatGPT said that Beijing may also be interested in, quote, monitoring or regulating such AI products to make sure they're not being used in ways that could pose a threat to national security or social stability.
This has potential implications in social media, searching, education, and essentially every area of information processing, right? So the government wants to adopt attitudes of, okay, wait and see. Let's allow some development of the new technology, but let's put a close eye on what's going on what firms are doing, so as to make sure, whenever there's new applications coming out, they can deal with it and deal with the potential political implications.
Despite the Chinese government's concerns, Chinese tech companies are pushing ahead with the development of their own chatbots. Chinese search giant Baidu has launched its ChatGPT rival called Ernie Bot, which can do things like generate images from text and write pieces of literature. Alibaba has taken the raps of Tongyi Qianwen, an AI chatbot that can provide recipes and tell children's stories, as well as take meeting notes and draft business proposals. Other tech giants including Tencent and NetEase have all said they're working on ChatGPT style products.
Now, we couldn't get our hands on a test version of a Chinese chatbot because they require a Chinese ID card and phone number to sign up, which we don't have, but some reporters in China had a chance to try them out.
Several reports suggest Baidu's Ernie Bot will end conversations at the mention of Chinese President Xi Jinping, and it says that it has not yet learned how to answer such a query. Other conversations about politically sensitive topics are also shut down. ChatGPT, in comparison, was okay handling queries about President Xi Jinping.
Chinese giants have carefully crafted their announcements around their AI chatbots. Instead of talking about this open-ended ChatGPT competitor, they're talking about generative AI in specific contexts, for example, for business or for creating literature.
They need to move extremely cautiously. If anything, we have learned from the massive tech crackdown experienced by Chinese tech sector over the past years. We know that from now they need to be avoid being perceived by the government as building a business empire that doing businesses across different lines. The more specific in terms of their product, the more certainty they will deliver to the regulators, and they will be able to more credibly signal, okay, I'm harmless. It's not like I'm developing any disruptive technology, right? So I think this is a regulatory concern, and uncertainty has been the major factor behind what they're doing right now.
That point about regulation is key. The Chinese government started clamping down on its domestic tech sector in late 2020. This covered areas from data protection to antitrust, wiping billions of dollars off their value. It created an environment of uncertainty for tech giants, which had to move cautiously with new projects, especially those with the potential to concern Beijing.
But as part of the regulatory crackdown, the Chinese government has introduced some pretty groundbreaking laws. One of those governs the use of so-called deep synthesis technology, which is basically AI-generated content, which is exactly what ChatGPT and its clones are attempting to do.
In April 2023, Chinese regulators released draft measures to manage generative AI. The ground rules say content created by this AI should reflect the core values of socialism and must not undermine state power. Paul Triolo is the technology policy lead at consulting firm Albright Stonebridge.
China, I think, has tried to get ahead of this regulatory curve by passing these regulations that are targeting very specific AI kinds of applications. And in a sense, they're ahead of Western efforts, which tend to be focused on things like bias and safety of AI algorithms. The Chinese approach has been to give regulators at least the ability to look at these algorithms and determine whether they're causing consumer harm or some very specific kind of application. But I think the ChatGPT, the emergence of this as such a big issue is going to put a lot of pressure on regulators to figure out how to deal with this, because the technology is moving forward at such a rapid pace. And so now there's going to be a scramble in China, I think, among regulators to figure out, how do we really get a handle on this?
What's at play here, of course, is a broader battle for tech supremacy between the US and China, with artificial intelligence being the key technology that both nations want to dominate.
This is now the new frontier, if you will, of US-China AI competition, if that's the meme you want to use, because I don't think the Chinese government is going to allow, US generated ChatGPT versions to enter China and vice versa, right? I mean, the US government is probably equally as concerned about the potential for, TikTok or ByteDance to use generative AI models.
So what does this all mean for China's ChatGPT rivals on the world stage? Can they find success abroad?
Many of extremely popular Chinese apps like Tencent's WeChat, their overseas market share has been very limited, right? So this is a fundamental challenge, whether overseas customers, the Western customers, are happy to accept a product that involves like heavily censored information. So I think Chinese companies may have some advantages in relatively niche sectors, but a much more general product like ChatGPT, I think Chinese companies has a very long way to go.